Good afternoon. My name is Sara McLean. I'm an assistant director in the civil fraud section at the Department of Justice and one of the co-chairs of today's conference. I'm here with Lisa Noller and Rick Morgan, the other co-chairs, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you here. We have actually planned this conference at least 3 times with Courtney Bronson and Donna Prather-Williams, and we are very grateful to them for their support at the ABA. But with the pandemic, it's been in person, it's been virtual, it's been in person on a different day, and nobody is happier than we are to kick this off and have you all here with us. We have a fantastic lineup. We've got a terrific set of Relators Council, a fantastic group of defense counsel, and on the government end, we have attorneys from my office at Maine Justice, the civil fraud section, which is sort of the FCA mothership. We have assistant U.S. attorneys from different parts of the country that are very active in this area. We have state assistant attorney generals. We're going to have my boss, Deputy Assistant Attorney General Michael Granston from the Justice Department. Later today, we've got a deputy administrator from CMS, who's a former assistant U.S. attorney and a former defense counsel who did this work, Alec Alexander. On Friday, it's really a fantastic lineup, a great group of topics, and I think you're in for a terrific presentation. This is the 13th National Institute on Civil False Claims Act and Quitem Enforcement, and we'd be remiss if we didn't remember the animating spirit behind this event. That is Jack Basie, who many of you probably already heard. Really sadly passed away on Thanksgiving suddenly from a heart attack. Jack was the managing director at Freed Frank. He was an absolute lion of the defense bar, and this conference was really Jack's baby more than any other person's. Rick, Lisa, and I took it over the last time it was held in 2018, but Jack was the one who started it, and he chaired it for a very long time, most recently co-chairing it with Dan Anderson from my office and Jeb White from Taxpayers Against Fraud. He took such pride in this conference. He worked so hard. He was the first to arrive. He was the last to leave. And he truly enjoyed the company of everybody who spoke at it and came to it. Relators Council, Defense Counsel, and even government attorneys, as absolutely irritating as we can definitely be. Jack was my very first opposing counsel in a False Claims Act case. I back in like late 90s, early 2000s, when Michael Granston was a line attorney in the fraud section, and Steve Altman, who's going to be my co-panelist on the settlement panel, is now a mediator, was my boss in the fraud section. I was the most junior attorney in the fraud section, and I was given a very small case in Mississippi where the U.S. Attorney's Office wanted someone from Maine Justice to take the lead on it. And I investigated this thing, for a year and a half. Did my best with it, and we got to the point where we needed to talk to the defendant about the case. This is what we found. What do you have to say? Do you want to try to settle it? So I reach out to this hospital, and who gets back to me but Jack Basie? To this day, my husband, who, he's now my husband, he was some guy I was dating back then, will remember me coming to him and saying, "You will not believe what has just happened. Mr. Quitem is on the other side of my case." I was absolutely dismayed. And of course, I didn't need to be at all, because Jack was the perfect opposing counsel for anybody to have, and certainly any young Justice Department attorney. I spoke to Dan Anderson about him just yesterday, and Dan put it really well. He said, all of us government attorneys always knew that when Jack came in the door, we had to be on our A game. He came thoroughly prepared and would, in his manner, give us a very hard time about our wrong-headed positions. But as soon as the meeting ended, he would want to share his tales. His humanity always showed through, no matter how contentious the meeting might be, and I felt that he always treated all of us with great respect, even when he strongly disagreed with our positions. He was one of a kind. And that was Jack's spirit in the practice, and it was the spirit with which he put this conference together, bringing all of us together every year, every couple of years, to exchange our ideas, to debate passionately the issues, but in a collegial way, where we respect one another. And I hope that spirit carries forward. Rick, Lisa, and I are thrilled to have taken over chairing the conference from Jack and the others. He was truly one of a kind. Rick, I'll let you take it away. I think you're muted, Rick. Sorry.
We were, the three of us were getting together yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning to figure out what we were going to do this morning. And in the meantime, learned of Jack's death. And it became obvious, to all of us what it was that we needed to really touch on this morning. Jack, I found out in a call from Doug Baruch, who is Jack's longtime partner and co-author in his treatise, surviving author of the current fourth, I believe, edition. I think any mention of the treatise needs to include Jennifer Wallenberg, who worked on it for many years with Jack, and kept him in line to the extent anyone possibly could. Not knowing his family, maybe they had better luck. But I feel like, having participated in the conference from early years, frankly, I felt a little bit more like a pincushion than a collaborator at the beginning, but that changed over time. And I think Jack really, that was simply because of his force of personality, not because of any animosity. But I think that he really did view this conference as a safe place for relators, lawyers like me, and government lawyers and defense lawyers to come together and share ideas, maybe bend an elbow together. And I think that we're all the better for it. And certainly Lisa and Sara and I have kept that mission front and center as we've gone through the last two iterations. It's risky to raise the name of a defense lawyer among the relators bar for obvious and not obvious reasons probably, but I let folks know about Jack's death, and I'm just going to read a few of the comments that come in, and they all basically sang from the same songbook. One old hand said, "I sat across the table from Jack in both criminal and qui tam cases and always found him to be extremely competent and a gentleman. He defined the concept of the loyal opposition." Another said, "His confidence in how correct he was never overshadowed his love for a good argument and adversary. He was a gentleman who will continue to argue in his new jurisdiction." And I'll use Jeb's name because he knew Jack better than most of us, having co-organized the conference for a number of cycles. Jack said, "Behind the public bravado, Jack was a dear friend who cared deeply for others. He was quick to offer a joke and a side of advice and made me a better lawyer." And really, we all need people like that in our lives. And I think those of us who had Jack as a collaborator, possibly role model, really benefited from it. So one comment said, "Jack mixed it up like a prize fighter while still setting a great example of civility and collegiality for all of us," and included a fact that I certainly didn't know, which was that before Jack went to law school, he'd been a member of the Teamsters Union. And I think when you factor that in, it explains a few things. So in 2009, Congress passed the FARA during this conference, and it's oddly coincidental that Jack died the week before the conference, but literally it passed on one of the days of the conference, and Jack, someone shared that Jack had come running into the ballroom with a big stack of the language of the bill that had just passed and passed it out to everybody. And that language, I think the defense lawyers in the room would agree, was better for the relators lawyers than for them, but Jack was still thrilled to be able to give it to us with red lines so everybody could talk about it, and it became, of course, the talk of the conference. I had the good fortune to be with Jack in a Senate hearing room before that bill passed, where he was testifying and a client of mine was testifying. And as a result of that, I can never think of Jack without adding the words rhymes with crazy. Because, and I'm just going to read from the transcript, Senator Durbin, "Mr. Bose, am I pronouncing your name correctly?" "Basie, Your Honor, it rhymes with crazy." Senator Durbin, "Pardon me?" Mr. Basie, "It rhymes with crazy." And of course there was laughter. Senator Durbin said, "Right, and for the record, I'm not a Your Honor." Jack said, "That's where I spend most of my time, Senator. I spend it in court." And I think that Despite everything else he did, Jack was a major presence in the courtroom, sometimes irritating to those of us, at least on the other side of the aisle, but always impressive in his grasp of the law and his ability to apply it. And in addition to that, he was a blithe spirit and a great dinner companion if you had the chance. So he'll be missed, but he looms large over this week and over future iterations of the conference. Lisa.
So for some reason, I agreed to go after that moving tribute to Jack Basie, but here we are. Thank you guys very much for joining. And I have the unenviable position of not only closing out the remarks, but also of being the defense counsel sponsor who is trying very hard to step into Jack's shoes. So I'm Lisa Noller. I'm the chair of the Government Investigations and Defense and Ketam practice at Foley and Lardner. And my first interaction with Jack was when I was at the government, when my first deputy, Linda Wazensky, who's the ACE coordinator in the Northern District of Illinois, told me that if I wanted to handle Ketam cases, I needed to read two things, the statute and Jack's treatise. And for a government lawyer to encourage another government lawyer to read a defense take on the False Claims Act is really saying something. And just last week, on I can say this as a defense lawyer, but on an unintervened meritless Ketam that's been brought against my poor client, my co-counsel at Foley and I were trying to work through a dicey issue. And where did we go? We went to the treatise because it's a really valuable horn book. And for those of you who don't consult with it regularly, you should get yourself a copy because it's a really good starting point. So I'm here to do two things, which is to say thank you guys very much for attending, and we look forward to the next 3 days of spirited discussion among not just Rick, Sara, and myself, but also among members of this really interesting bar of relators counsel, government counsel, and defense lawyers. And lastly, if you wouldn't mind, please clicking on the sponsor tile in the lobby and giving a shout out to Cohn and Colapinto, which is a relators firm that sponsored the conference, and also to my firm, Foley and Lardner, which also sponsored it. Sara did not sponsor it because she cannot, but otherwise I'm sure she would want us all to know that the government does have a seat at the table, and that's what makes this such an interesting conference, as she noted, because the government really is an integral part of these cases. So thank you guys very much. We look forward to the next 3 days and being together, hopefully in person, the next time that this happens, so we can all raise a glass, not just to Jack, but also to each other and our mutual respect in this wonderful practice. Thank you.